Welcome back to my vessel of light. Tonight begins with an absence that behaved like a compass. Losing a person gave her back a map, and the directions pointed inward with a kindness that did not ask permission. Eliza Hart watched the door close on a soft afternoon. He left to find himself. The latch clicked. She was quiet on the hallway. The apartment exhaled, and the silence felt both generous and unbearably bright. They had promised space before, promises shaped like patient weather. But this time departure carried luggage and certainty. He carried a blank itinerary. She carried a house that would need new agreements for breath and belonging. She made tea and sat by the window with the city practicing its evening. Traffic hummed. A neighbor watered plants. Her phone blinked without demands. The air felt like a room waiting to learn new grammar. On the table lay a folded transit map from years ago. Lines in red and green and gold, stations like small decisions. Eliza traced a route with her finger and laughed at the accuracy of metaphor. Breakup. Healing felt like learning to read the city again, not with urgency, with presence. Find the river, find a bench. Let attention arrive before choice. Turn left when the street remembers your name kindly. She wrote 3 simple rules on a card for the fridge. Water before messages, light before conclusions. Walk before answers. The card steadied her hands. Small structures make space for feelings to pass without flooding. Morning found her earlier than habit. She opened the window and let cool air decide first sentences. The kettle learned her new timing. The apartment sounded like a studio instead of a waiting room for apologies. She cleaned one drawer without ceremony, expired warranties, pens that refused ink. A key from another life. She thanked what it served, released what it finished. The drawer closed without argument, a lesson disguised as housekeeping. On the 3rd day, she visited the river steps. Geese practiced ownership. A child counted stones. A runner slowed to tie a shoe. Elisa sat and let the bench name her temporarily someone who stays. A text from him arrived without sharp corners. He was safe. He was far. He needed longer. She wished him well without pretending to be unbreakable. The message floated away like a paper boat choosing distance. She returned home and cooked something simple that would forgive mistakes. Lentils, garlic, lemon. The kitchen smelled like a small optimism. She ate at the table instead of the couch. Posture can be a declaration of dignity. Friends circled gently. Maya brought flowers in silence. Daniel brought a toolbox for squeaky hinges. Lena sent a playlist that began slower than grief and ended with something like weather clearing near the coast. That night, Eliza wrote a letter she would never send, not to him. To the version of herself that negotiated against her own breath. The letter said, "I will not sprint for love ever again." She pinned the letter inside the closet like a quiet oath, then placed a soft sweater where she could reach it without climbing. Accessible comfort is not weakness. It is wisdom. She smiled at the practicality. At work, she asked for projects that needed depth over spectacle. Her manager looked surprised and then relieved. Strong yes needs room. Eliza learned that boundaries at the office heal the heart that answers emails after midnight. On Saturday, she took the map and rode 3 stops beyond her usual orbit. A market smelled like oranges and newsprint. A bookstall held a thin memoir about leaving well. She bought it in a blue pen. The memoir offered an exercise. Write the city you want to live inside, and then move 1 corner toward it today. Eliza chose mornings without alarms and evenings with windows open. She underlined move 1 corner gently. She created small rituals measured in minutes. a stretch by the sink, a cup of water before coffee, a list with only 3 lines. She called these navigation, not discipline, because discipline had once worn another person's voice. A neighbor named Sora waved in the hallway and asked if she needed a ladder. The ceiling light had been dim for weeks. They replaced the bulb together. Brightness returned without drama. Both laughed at how easy some repairs are. That night, the city lost power for a moment. The apartment turned into a candle and breath. Eliza realized she did not feel abandoned by electricity or by absence. She felt accompanied by rhythm more than certainty. On Sunday, she packed a small bag and visited a neighborhood museum. Photographs of bridges under construction lined the walls. Every image showed cables learning tension and trust. She whispered thank you to the builders without needing names. Breakup healing continued like those bridges, strand by strand, not a leap. She sent a message to Maya that said progress without spectacle feels honest. Maya replied with a heart and a picture of soup that looked like kindness. A week later, she walked past a cafe where they had shared winter croissants. She entered anyway, sat at a new table, ordered tea, and wrote a page about future weather that respected her needs and calendar. She noticed she no longer edited herself in small ways. She laughed too loudly and then allowed the laughter to finish. She asked for more honey without apology. She chose the corner seat with the warm beam of sun. A job invitation arrived that sounded impressive and hostile. Travel without rest, performance without purpose, pay with panic. Eliza declined kindly and recommended someone who loved that climate. Her inbox felt lighter than the good news once promised. She moved furniture by inches, not by drama. The couch rotated toward the window. The rug shifted to meet the morning. A plant finally got the right light. The room exhaled and joined her in choosing survivable pace. One evening, she found the transit map again and drew a line from her old address to the river bench, then another from the river to the museum, then a circle around her apartment labeled Practice Sanctuary. She decided to practice leaving the phone face down for 1 hour nightly, 5 nights in a row. The room filled with actual time. She read 3 chapters and emailed nobody. The world did not break. A letter arrived from an aunt with a recipe and a story. The recipe tasted like childhood Saturday. The story described leaving a city and finding herself in the walking between. Eliza folded both into her week. She returned a box of his books with a note that said, "Thank you for the chapters that taught me." No drama, no edits. The post office accepted the parcel with the polite authority of a neutral priest. That evening, she met an old piano in the community center and tried scales. Mistakes sounded like rain on metal. Teenagers played basketball in the next room. Life continued without waiting for perfect endings or new beginnings. Breakup healing was not erasing. It was compost. Old sentences turned into soil for new mornings. She slept deeply for the first time in months and woke without checking for messages that had stopped arriving. On a rainy afternoon, she opened a blank map and wrote stations named after habits. Water, window, walk, work, wonder. She colored the transfer points where friendships live, where boundaries begin, where yes returns without betraying no. She placed the map on the fridge beside her 3 rules. She added a 4th. Choose the second option if the first was chosen only to avoid feeling. Courage often lives in the second door to the left. A message from him arrived weeks later. He hoped she was well. He had learned useful things. He was still away. Eliza wished him steadiness and returned to her soup. The apartment did not shift temperature. That night, she hosted friends for simple pasta and ordinary laughter. They played a quiet game. Each person named one weight to set down. The table grew lighter. Plates cleared themselves. The sink did not mind the work. She realized love was still welcome, only now it would need to meet a map with boundaries. Arrivals must knock. Departures must wave. Staying must include chairs for both joy and fatigue. Her heart posted the rules kindly. On a bright morning, she walked to the river with a small paper boat. She wrote on it, "Return to yourself," then placed it on the water. The boat drifted and caught a current that knew what to do. She started a weekly practice called Inventory of Good. 3 lines: what helped, who helped, what I learned. The lists looked like simple receipts from a generous store. She kept them in a jar that used to hold coins. One evening, Sora knocked with extra soup and a question about paint colors. They chose a shade called Early Pear for the hallway. The building felt friendlier. Sometimes community is deciding between 2 greens and laughing at the seriousness. Eliza volunteered at the library on Saturdays, sorting donated books. A small girl brought a torn atlas and asked if maps can heal. Eliza said yes, especially the ones we draw ourselves after getting lost politely. When she finally passed their old street with a calm heart, she noticed a new bakery. She bought a small cake and wrote on the napkin, "Endings can feed beginnings if we share them." She left half for later. She wrote to her future self with a promise: "I will not postpone joy until certainty arrives. I will not sell sleep to buy approval. I will keep a map that prefers parks to detours through panic." Breakup healing had given her back personal gravity. She walked differently, shoulders lower, jaw unclenched, eyes interested in trees again. She understood that nobody completes anybody. We practice belonging and share snacks for the road. "Welcome back to the present," she told herself at the window. The city agreed with a bus squeak and a bicycle bell. The kettle agreed with a small sigh. The day agreed by beginning without consulting the past. If you are healing after a breakup, consider writing your own transit map. Name the stations you need, mark the benches that return your breath. Practice departures that bless and arrivals that knock. Let kindness be the conductor. Thank you for being here with my vessel of light. If this story kept you company, like the video so the candle travels farther, subscribe to my vessel of light, and share one small rule guiding your breakup healing today.